Legacy Builders, welcome back to another show. I'm here at the Life School Masterclass show with your host, Elona. I help companies scale their purpose and profits. And today we're going to have a great conversation around my favorite topic of all, which is development and leadership, the human resource of any company, how to become strategic communicators. I think strategy in anything we do as leaders and as people that are looking to create impact in the world is our favorite word because it really helps us work in clarity, work smart in our heart, but also ensure that working on the right priorities to be able to align our purpose with profits. My guest today is definitely an expert in this area. Anthony LAVOPA, all the way from Long Island to New York, is here with us today. Anthony, thanks so much for coming on, and I want to thank you ahead of time for all the amazing work you're doing in the world and the time that you'll be dedicating to our show today.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
It is such a pleasure. So, Anthony, let's dive right into the topic for my ambitious entrepreneurs that are listening to us. So, strategic communication. Why is that important? What's your perspective around that?
It's a really great question. I think the one thing that I've found in 15 years so far of active military service and then working with people on the side is there seems to be always a communication challenge between people at the most senior levels of organizations and people at the most junior organizations. And I think it's always seems to be an assumption that the communication style, word choice, method of delivery, et cetera, that more senior people use will be something that's absorbed at the more junior levels. And I found over 15 years that that's not the case. In fact, when you're talking to your peers at a senior level, there's a style of communication. When you're talking to, let's say, one group of people that are one area or level of seniority below you, that's another. And then when you really try and reach down into those more junior levels, particularly with new people on your team, it can be really challenging to communicate with them using the same methods if you don't understand how they communicate and how they learn.
Yeah, I love that. I see that firsthand as well with helping companies scale. That obviously, the bigger the company, the more relationships there are going on, and the bigger the culture gets. I guess we could say it that way. It just becomes a little more challenging for leaders to be able to have those high touch points that are needed in order to nurture the right relationships, but also keep people focused around, the right priorities, so to speak, and ensuring that everybody's obviously also heard and seen and working on the right things. Anthony, based on your experience with strategic communication, what are some of the pain points that you've seen when someone might be experiencing if communication might be an issue, whether it's solopreneuring all the way to maybe a bigger team?
I would say the biggest challenge that I see is the inability to reach the audience you're trying to reach. And I think there's a number of factors that go into it. One is the communication style of the person doing the communicating. Are where is their strengths and what areas of communication are they not as strong in? I often see that in today's world, using technology, many people try and communicate via email, which is good. Except a lot of things can get lost in email. The tone of people's voice, if there's some unintended messages or perhaps intended messages that are kind of between the lines, so to speak, those don't often get communicated. The second major piece is how do the people learn that you're communicating to, or the people that you want to be receiving the communication you're giving? Are they auditory learners? Are they visual learners? And so, again, some people don't do well at, let's say, a town hall style, which many senior people use as a means to just put mass information out to mass amounts of people. But many people don't learn or absorb information well that way. Many people need to read it. Many people need to read it and write it down. And so when I talk to people, or even as I've learned over my years of military service, if I don't if I don't know what way my team learns best, and I'm not communicating to them in a way that they can absorb the information, then I'm saying something, or I'm writing something, or I'm displaying something, and it's not getting to the people that I need to.
Mm, absolutely. I think understanding the different styles is so important because you could be communicating in the way that you maybe like to be communicated to, but is that actually landing with the other party? And I like the perspective that you shared with the audience because I think we are all in this virtual environment and then we understand there's, think of the other person in front of you and figure out, how is it that you can better communicate something to them. I think that can be transferred anywhere and everywhere for sure. Anthony, how about developing people, right? I mean, one of the main responsibilities of a leader is to develop other people around them. What are some of the insights that you've seen in your experience that you could share with us around developing the people around us?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and oftentimes people will say, use the phrase like train your replacement or train somebody to do your job, and it's not so much about training them to do something, right? Training is kind of a recipe card, like if this happens, do this, and that's not really what we're doing as leaders. We're trying to develop the people that work around us and work with us, and so there's a number of things that go into that. One, and we kind of already touched on, is the communication piece, right? And there's a mentorship level involved with helping people around you understand how to communicate above and below to the people and the people around them, right? The way that you communicate with your boss is not typically the same way that you communicate with your team, or the way you may communicate with some auxiliary ancillary staff in your company. And so the communication piece is one. The second major piece is the innovation piece, and it's how do you communicate intent and outcome to your team, and then as a leader kind of be able to take that step back and let your team embrace what you're telling them in the direction you're asking them to go, and kind of being a little bit hands off. And I found, particularly as we come out of the COVID time period, both in the military and the private sector, that people are very hesitant to kind of take their hands off the steering wheel, so to speak, and let their team drive the problem. And there's always this seems to be a natural instinct to kind of continue to kind of drive the car from outside of the car, if you can kind of use that as a visual. And so from a leadership perspective, it's knowing when to take yourself out of that picture, how much you can let your team lean forward before they fall over the handlebars of their bike. Again, kind of using that visual analogy. And so what you want to do as a leader is balance how forward they're leaning, and give them the opportunity to have some failures and some learning opportunity without the overall task being a failure. And I think that drives to the third point, which is leaders at all levels have to embrace some level of failure, or else there's no learning that occurs, right? And failure along the way doesn't mean, or doesn't equate to failure of the overall project, but rather you should look at it from the perspective of getting better results for the overall outcome that you're looking for. And so as you do something, it doesn't go quite right, and so you reevaluate as a team, you adapt and innovate, and then you try it again, and then you keep iterating until you get to a better product overall. So I would say those are the three major things that I found typically working with people.
I love all three, and thank you so much for sharing those. And specifically the last one, especially with the world that we're living in, the only thing that we know to be, for sure, is constant change and improvement. So I love that you shared the failure piece because it's all society's way to. We have to shift that. It's all about continuously improving the process, the things that we're doing, and as long as we're focusing on that, there's always going to be an evolution of the growth of the company and an evolution of the people inside the company as well, right? Because it's all really one thing. What makes up a company is really a bunch of systems and people, right? So the evolution of it's really important as well. Anthony, I would love to hear a little bit around what I call the purpose of things, the reason why this is important to you, doing this work in the world. What were some of the most meaningful moments in your journey that led you here, really? That you could share with us?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, for me, from my perspective, it's about paying it forward. I've been fortunate to have had many fantastic mentors. Most of them were senior officers that I worked for. I have some peers who I think are just absolutely brilliant. Brilliant naval officers, brilliant tacticians, and so I'm fortunate in that area as well. But I think really it's about when I look back over the last 15 years of my military career, or even my years in college, and I didn't really quite understand what I was getting myself into, from a leadership perspective and the people side, and that's where I try to help people understand and realize that we manage things, right? We manage gadgets and processes. Um, but we lead people, and people is the important part, but people are also the most challenging part, right? When you interact with a computer, when you have a process, the process either works or it doesn't work, and there's some process refinement, again, kind of going back to that, how do we fail forward, that mentality, right? But the people are the most complex system or part of any process, and I didn't really understand the people portion until I made it about 6 or 7 years into my military career. I sort of just had this, um, one size fits all approach from a leadership perspective, because it's where my comfort area was, and that's kind of how I dealt with people and led people, and it was sort of a one size fits all. And I was fortunate that, most of the people who tried it on, it fit, and so it worked. And I feel like the first few years of my career I was successful. But if I had to go back and do it all over again, knowing what I know now, or having some mentors earlier in my career than I did, that would have been incredibly helpful. And so now, kind of my time and focus is divided into a number of areas. One is junior officers that are just coming into the Navy, and talking to them about my experience, where I wish I could change things if I could go back, how I would do things differently, who I would look for on a ship or in the Navy to learn from and learn earlier, to apply those leadership lessons. The second area is kind of my peers, and how do I help, people at my level, kind of what I call people in the middle, be comfortable leading in the middle, um, and being that bridge and that gap between junior levels and the much more senior strategic level of what's going on. And then the third group is people in the private sector who look at the military and they say, wow, the military has all these great things, communication and structure and all these other things. And how do I apply that to what I'm doing? And that's true. The military does have a lot of structure. Sometimes the structure is good, and sometimes there's some negative aspects of having something so structured. Um, and so that's kind of where I've sort of divided my time into those three areas, to really help people understand the learning and leading people aspect, and why that's so important.
I love your authentic advantage of marrying both, because yes, the military piece, when we think of that, there could be a lot of structure, discipline, more of like a rigid, I guess, system, let's call it that way. But then you also have the human resource part, which I so highly agree that it's not a linear process. Just like nature, nothing in nature is linear. There's like zigzags. And if it's linear, someone drew it, like a human drew it, right? So, and that's why there's so much need for support with leadership as priorities change, and we evolve and we grow, and our impact expands, our purpose expands, and our profits expand as well, and all of those different metrics and all the right things that we need to focus on. So I appreciate your unique perspective and insight, as I highly value that here at the Life School, because I definitely believe as humans we have our unique experiences and the ways that our journeys have shaped us, whether it was our personal life or professional. So I appreciate you also sharing this as well. Anthony, I actually have a fill in the blanks exercise that I do with my guests. So it's time to ask you, if I were to ask you to fill in the blanks for these three questions, what would your answer be? So the first one is, what inspires me is.
Um, wow, that's a good question. What inspires me is my family.
Beautiful. Best advice in leadership I've received is
The best advice I've received in leadership is don't think too highly of yourself and give your best to the people around you every day.
love it. And my last question for you, fill in the blank. My best creative outlet is
Ooh, my best creative outlet. That's a really tough one. I don't know. I don't know what my best creative outlet is, to be honest. That's a really good question.
hmm,
Um,
food
I
for thought.
think, yeah, I'll tell you, I think best outside, and I think best early in the morning. So I'll guess I'll fill in the blank with that.
I love it. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for all your answers, all your amazing expertise that you shared with us, and your experience, I should say, because maybe sometimes expertise is something that might be a level up for a lot of people, but experience is really important, and your time is also very important. I would love to maybe wrap up the interview with asking you, what is your unique methodology or process in the ways that you serve the world in helping the world become a better place, specifically, I'm sure your clients, and also where is it that this audience can at least start and continue this, well, we started the conversation, let them continue the conversation with you.
Yeah, great questions. I'd say first of all, I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to find me, I'm on LinkedIn. I post routinely. I try to be a regular presence there and kind of try and put thoughts to paper, so to speak, on LinkedIn on my view for things. And from a methodology standpoint, I think it's individual based, right? Everyone's leadership journey is very individual. It's very unique, and that's shaped by the experience we have, the people around us, where we're trying to get to as leaders. And so it's really about trying to unpack the experience that people have, understand where it is that they want to go as a leader, and recognizing that not everybody desires the same thing, right? Not everybody wants to be the CEO of a company. Some people have a very specific niche role that they want to get to. So, and then the third piece of that is looking at where they are now, where they want to get to, and what does that gap look like, and how do you navigate the gap? And that's kind of really where I spend most of my time, is helping people to navigate that gap. And what does the gap look like? And I'll tell you, it's different for every single person that I talk to.
I love it. And that really goes to show something that I always say, that our purpose is individual. Our paths are different, why we're here, right? So we get motivated by different things. We have different gifts. We have different life experience. So you're working, helping people personalize all of that and package it together and really be clear on those gaps so that people are working towards the right priorities. I think it's really important in saving people also time, which I think it's one of the things that I'm like almost mad when I found out. Why did no one teach me that? That's actually the most important thing, that we have, that is a very important source and valuable resource. So I definitely would highly encourage you all to go and connect with Anthony on his LinkedIn and further continue this conversation. I want to thank you again, Anthony, for coming on and sharing what you just did. And I always want to thank you and for all your support and always paying attention to all the amazing guests that we are bringing in. The more you subscribe, review, share the show, of course, the bigger the guests get, and the more information we get to share. And it always in the big purpose of helping you connect a couple of dots through each conversation, because that's all we really can do in such a short time span here. So, and we also still have a few sponsor spots available. So if you're interested for that, let me know. Thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you next time with another show, another amazing guest. Bye, everybody. Have a blessed day. Are you looking for paid TEDx, podcast, and free visibility speaking opportunities with other like minded audiences to put on your calendar? Speaking is one of those daily operational activities in our service-based businesses so that we can expose the visibility that we have, but also share our message and share our work with new audiences every day. Inside our C-suite community expert program here at the Life School, we have made this very, very simple for you. It's a plug and play system. You just fill out forms and also place speaking opportunities onto your calendar without any overwhelm. We will strategically introduce you to high-level quality connections that will move your mission and vision further faster. And also, you'll get to participate in our own speaking events, magazine, and podcast opportunities that we have here at the Life School with an audience and community of over 30,000 seasoned CEOs. For more information, I would love to invite you to go check out our website at elonalaparicoaching.com/C-suite program. See you back